In addition to its original meaning, the word karma also implies causation. Any work, any action, any thought that produces an effect is called a karma. Thus, the law of karma means the law of causation, of inevitable cause and sequence. Wheresoever there is a cause, there an effect must be produced. This necessity cannot be resisted. Whatever we see or feel or do, whatever action there is anywhere in the universe, while being the effect of past work on the one hand, becomes on the other a cause in its turn, and produces its own effect. It is necessary, together with this, to consider what is meant by the word love. By love is meant the tendency of a series to repeat itself. When we see one event followed by another, or sometimes happening simultaneously with another, we expect this sequence or coexistence to recur. Our universe is that portion of existence which is characterized as space, time and causation. This universe is only a part of infinite existence, thrown into a peculiar mold, composed of space, time and causation. It necessarily follows that love is possible only within this conditioned universe. Beyond it, there cannot be any love. When we speak of the universe, we only mean that portion of existence which is limited by our mind, the universe of the senses, which we can see, feel, touch, hear, think of, imagine. This alone is under law. But beyond its existence cannot be subject to law, because causation does not extend beyond the world of our minds. Anything beyond the range of our mind and our senses is not bound by the law of causation, as there is no mental association of things in the region beyond the senses, and no causation without association of ideas. It is only when being or existence gets molded into name and form that it obeys the law of causation, and is said to be under law, because all law has its essence in causation. Therefore, we see at once that there cannot be any such thing as free will. The very words are a contradiction, because will is what we know, and everything that we know is within our universe, and everything within our universe is molded by the conditions of space, time, and causation. Everything that we know, or can possibly know, must be subject to causation, and that which obeys the law of causation cannot be free. It is acted upon by other agents, and becomes a cause in its turn. But that which has become converted into the will, which was not the will before, but which, when it fell into this mold of space, time and causation, became converted into the human will, is free, and then this will gets out of this mold of space, time and causation, it will be free again. From freedom it comes, and becomes molded into this bondage, and it gets out and goes back to freedom again. From freedom it comes, in bondage it rests, and goes back into that freedom again. So, when we speak of man as no other than that infinite being, which is manifesting itself, we mean that only one very small part thereof is man. This body and this mind which we see are only one part of the whole, only one spot of the infinite being. This whole universe is only one speck of the infinite being, and all our loves, our bondages, our joys and our sorrows, our happinesses and our expectations are only within this small universe. All our progression and digression are within its small compass. So you see how childish it is to expect the continuation of this universe, the creation of our minds, and to expect to go to heaven, which after all must mean only a repetition of this world that we know. You see at once that it is an impulsive and childish desire to make the wall of infinite existence conform to the limited and conditioned existence which we know. There may be millions of kinds of happiness and beings and laws and progress and causation, all acting outside the little universe that we know. And after all, the whole of this comprises but one section of our infinite nature. To acquire freedom, we have to get beyond the limitations of this universe. It cannot be found here. Perfect equilibrium, or what the Christians call the peace that passed all understanding, cannot be had in this universe, nor in heaven, nor in any place where our mind and thoughts can go, where the senses can feel, or which the imagination can conceive. No such place can give us that freedom, because all such places will be within our universe, and it is limited by space, time, and causation. There may be places that are more ethereal than this earth of ours, where enjoyments may be keener, but even those places must be in the universe, and therefore in bondage to law. So we have to go beyond, and real religion begins where this little universe ends. These little joys and sorrows and knowledge of things end there, and the reality begins. Until we give up the thirst after life, the strong attachment to this our intransient conditioned existence, we have no hope of catching even a glimpse of that infinite freedom beyond. It stands to reason then that there is only one way to attain to that freedom, which is the goal of all the noblest aspirations of mankind. And that is by giving up this little life, giving up this little universe, giving up this earth, giving up heaven, giving up the body, giving up the mind, giving up everything that is limited and conditioned. If we give up our attachment to this little universe of the senses or of the mind, we shall be free immediately. The only one way to come out of bondage is to go beyond the limitations of the law, to go beyond causation. But it is a most difficult thing to give up the clinging to this universe. Few ever attain to that. There are two ways to do that. One is called the neti, which means not this, not this. The other is called the iti, which means this. The former is the negative and the latter is the positive way. The negative way is the most difficult. It is only possible to the man of the very highest exceptional minds and gigantic wills who simply stand up and say, "No, I will not have this." And the mind and the body obey their will, and they come out successful. But such people are very rare. The vast majority of mankind choose the positive way, the way through the world, making use of all the bondages themselves to break those very bondages. This is also kind of giving up, only it is done slowly and gradually, by knowing things, enjoying things, and thus obtaining experience, and knowing the nature of things until the mind lets them all go at last and becomes unattached. The former way of obtaining non-attachment is by reasoning, and the latter way is through work and experience. The first is the path of Jnana Yoga, and is characterized by the refusal to do any work. The second is that of Karma Yoga, in which there is no cessation from work. Everyone must work in the universe. Only those who are perfectly satisfied with the self, whose desires do not go beyond the self, whose mind never strays out of the self, to whom the self is all in all, only those do not work. The rest must work. A current rushing down of its own nature falls into a hollow and makes a whirlpool, and after running a little in that whirlpool, it emerges again in the form of the free current to go on unchecked. Each human life is like that current. It gets into the world, gets involved in this world of space, time and causation, whirls round a little, crying out, "My father, my brother, my name, my fame," and so on, and at last emerges out of it and regains its original freedom. The whole universe is doing that. Whether we know it or not, whether we are conscious or unconscious of it, we are all working to get out of the dream of the world. Man's experience in the world is to enable him to get out of its whirlpool.